Welcome back to NeuroDiverse Christian Couples. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Dan.
And today, when this is recording, is December 4th. So that means happy birthday, Dan. We all know Dan loves his birthday. It is on December 4th when this is going to air. If you want to know how Dan feels about his birthday, go back to last December and we'll talk about how Dan feels about his birthday and holidays. Today, we're going to be taking some thoughts from the book called Stress. It is written by, it's a Keys for Living library by June Hunt, whom we just saw, and she autographed my copy for me. So what we're going to be talking about, why would we be talking about stress? Do you think our couples have any stress?
Kind of like setting this one up.
Yes, this has been awesome. We've had a lot of stress just getting through setting up the podcast. All right, let me start out with what June Hunt and psychologists define as unhealthy stress. So unhealthy stress refers to the duration of stress over a considerable period of time. It includes external or internal pressure that God does not intend for us to experience. It causes detrimental effects to the body as well as the soul and the spirit. One of the things that came from my research was that over 70% of the wives have some kind of autoimmune or stress-related physical disorder. Distress will stretch us beyond the threshold of physical, mental, and emotional limits, and it will plunge us past the saturation point where nothing can be added without something else being eliminated. Right? She further says distress implies an external and temporary cause of great physical or mental strain and stress. It can also be defined as anguish, vexation, and affliction. Distress is used in the Bible more than 100 times. And distress is often a translation from the Hebrew word
Sarah,
which means straits or distress.
Probably really pop because the accent's on the last syllable. What's the difference between stress and distress?
Well, she said that from the scripture, that word would actually be more distress in scripture.
So what's an example of healthy stress if that's what if that's unhealthy stress?
Well, let's get to that in a minute. I'll have to find that page. But let's just kind of talk about the 7 classic causes of stress. And then what does that have to do with the couples that we work with? All right. Number 1, she gave us what?
She gave us conflict.
Ooh, conflict. Any of our couples in conflict?
About some.
Some? So let's see. Reasons you can experience conflict: opposing values, unresolved anger in relationships, unrealistic expectations of others. And here's the key. This is the number 1 thing I hear when I'm doing an intake: lack of communication in relationships. So where do you want to go? Where do you want to start?
I want to camp on opposing values.
Okay.
Because I think when a lot of people hear the word opposing values or values in general, they go to things like lying or character. And that's true. I think what's more common is simple thing like
somebody likes their birthday and somebody doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Or it could be the value of leftovers.
The value of family meals.
Right? No, we gotta have a home cooked meal every night. Or no, we don't. Right? That's not anything that's got a moral aspect to it. That is something I value.
I value maybe a different preference.
Right. But if you used to ask them, if you probably was to go deep, it's like, it's more than just a preference. Like it would have been something that, like, let's take birthday thing. Birthday for you was a highly celebrated thing going all the way into your childhood. Yes. It's not just a preference.
Right. It is part of my DNA.
Right. And when we say value, I think that's really what we mean. It's part of us. We almost identify with whatever that is to maybe certain levels, right? Because you without your birthday would be a very different thing. But you without a sandwich would be, right? You can preference. You see what I'm saying? You take value to this statement and you go really deep into who somebody is.
So where that becomes a problem even more, so any couple, neurotypical, neurodiverse, can have different values: family meals, Christmas, holidays, how we do Thanksgiving, how often we see our parents. Those are all different things that are different values. Where it becomes a problem a lot in the couples that we work with is if one person feels like their view is the most efficient or the most right, and because it is their value and deemed superior or most right, then it demeans or dismisses the other person's value.
Right. That could be um you only fill the car up with gas when it's actually got the light on, because that means I went to the gas station less. But that also means somebody else could get out the door and there's no gas in the car because, well, you didn't have time or something like that.
Right.
And then it creates
yeah, we have those two differences for sure. Somebody liked to play the gas game. You know, how long could I go?
It's just a fun game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can do the math.
Yeah. So the other one is unresolved anger in relationships. And so this is kind of problematic in some of our Christian couples. I see more than my non-Christian couples, because maybe there's wrong teaching about anger or expressing anger. Maybe some believe as a woman, you're not allowed to just express anger or be angry. Some may use anger to bully or be big and large to control the situation. So unresolved anger, if this isn't talked about and dealt with, it's going to lead to bitterness and resentment, and it's going to be far more than stress.
And that doesn't even have to be explosive type anger. That could be hidden anger, because you can see that explosive thing. It's unpleasant, but you know it exists. It's that hidden. I just walk around like a volcano,
almost ready to erupt.
Right.
Unrealistic expectation of others. Now that one can be tricky because of what one person thinks is unrealistic, the other person might not think is unrealistic. But even more important, I think, to talk about what expectations you have, right? The book fell to the floor when I started recording. But in Emotionally Healthy Relationships, which is a group being offered by two of our coaches, Iris is offering this group as well as Jeremy is offering the group. In Emotionally Healthy Relationships, it talks about that, first of all, your expectations need to be conscious. Like, for example, us getting married and me coming from a certain place where birthdays and holidays are important. His mother valued birthdays and holidays, so I'm not throwing her under the bus. Dan just did not value birthdays and holidays. So those first couple of holidays and birthdays were very tricky because of my expectation, and we had not had discussions really on what that meant or how to celebrate them. So they were first unconscious and uncommunicated with each other. So Scazzero would say, first of all, you need to have a conscious expectation of yourself, and then you need to communicate the expectation to someone else. Then you need to agree upon, are we going to be able to manage this expectation? Then if not, then what do we do? Many times expectations are kind of set on Disney or Hallmark or all the perfect Christian books out there that tell us what marriage is going to be like. And it really sets us up for unrealistic expectations, which is going to lead us back to conflict, which takes us back to the topic of a lot of stress. The last one in conflict is a huge one. When I ask people, why are we here? It's lack of intimacy and connection and our communication. So communication is really, really important. So on that note, we want to tell you then about some opportunities to work on your communication. In our spring, we will be doing Thanks for the Feedback and its companion book, Thank God for the Feedback. This book was brought to me by a man on the spectrum. He, one of my very first clients, brought this to me and said, this book makes sense. I understand everything. I think is all feedback is criticism to me. Understanding how to give and receive feedback has been life-changing. So I read the book, I started using it. And then when I went to for my master's certification in communication and conflict resolution, that book was one of the top books that was recommended. So that is a book, and we will be asking, even though we're going to be doing it separate, men and women, for that class, both the husband and the wife would both need to be enrolled in the class, because if only one person is trying to learn the feedback techniques, it's not going to be as efficient as if both people were learning.
Right.
And then in Emotionally Healthy Relationships, which is another, I call it a communication course, is going to talk about expectations. It's going to teach scripts on conflict resolution, incarnational listening or active listening, daily check-ins. So a bunch of great skills in that one. So number 2, what else causes stress?
Number 2 in the book is crisis.
Okay, tell us what that is.
Crisis. That could be death of a friend. It's a big catastrophe, right? Anything that is a significant disruption, from a health-related thing to maybe a car wreck.
Being displaced from your house for 18 months?
Yes.
Dealing with insurance.
Anything, the books mentions unexpected trauma of any kind, severe illness, separation, or divorce. So, anything that would, if you lost your job, maybe.
Or even a downsize or being displaced from your work. So there's a lot of things that can happen, whether, again, you're neurotypical or neurodiverse, if there's a crisis point. And sadly, what I really wish would happen is that when couples found out they were neurodiverse, they went immediately to counseling and coaching to get help. What usually happens, when do most people come to us?
When all the wheels are off the car.
All the wheels are off the car. They're a crisis.
And they're pulling the car.
Someone is wanting divorce. They're maybe at separation or about to separate. And really trying to start coaching or counseling when you're in a crisis mode, you're not really going to start counseling and coaching. We got to resolve the crisis. We've got to bring some stability. Which for you, the person on the other side might think, well, that's crazy. We're coming to you, we're in a crisis. You need to help us fix our marriage. Well, it's like, well, if things aren't stable and secure, we really can't do that. We've got to manage things and kind of like a triage, like what's going on.
Even in a doctor's office, they don't fix the root until they've sewed your arm back on.
Oh, okay. All right. You went big there. Okay. Other things that could cause
if you've
stress.
got a head cold, but your arm fell off in a trauma situation, they're going to fix your arm first.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you for explaining that. I wasn't sure where you were going with that. I couldn't bail you out. Usually I'm a good Dan interpreter, but I didn't know where that was going. The third cause of stress is change, and that could be positive change or negative change. It can be a shift in cultural or spiritual values, change in your finances, change in your marital status, transition in environment, transition in employment, disturbance in sleep or health habits. It could even be, like by the time this airs, we'll be 5 days away from marrying off one of our daughters. And while weddings are great and fun and positive events, they are very stressful. And they have lots of change, lots of financial change that comes with planning a wedding. So what other, and I guess for those on the spectrum, change in general, just changing a schedule or being asked to change your schedule can cause stress.
Right. The news.
Oh my goodness. The news right now is very stressful.
Right. I mean, the calamities going on everywhere, the uncertainty that's created because of that. The uncertainty would be a good thing that living in that causes stress. I don't know which word to put that in here, uncertainty, but maybe under concerns. But that's definitely a stress inducer.
Okay, so we've already talked about 3 huge ones that we see in our neurodiverse couples. A, conflict, because we're either not resolving it, we're just hoping it goes away, put our head in the sand. Maybe he or she will just forget about this tomorrow. We never revisit it. There's unrealistic expectations, don't know how to communicate with each other. There's at a crisis point. Again, the majority of people come when one of the parties has said separation or divorce, which you're pretty late in the game to come at that point, and then changes. We know that for those on the spectrum, neurodivergent people, change of any kind can be difficult. Even changes transitioning into the holiday season, going on vacation, packing up the car, getting to the destination, unpacking at the destination, coming home from the destination, and coming back into the home from the destination, and being in and out of work.
Be big,
right?
It could be someone loaded the dishwasher wrong, kind of change.
Yeah, for real. And then people get banned or pack the car wrong. Yes, I am guilty of both of those.
But it doesn't have to be change like somebody getting married or somebody getting unmarried or things like that. It really can be a routine type activity that for one person, who cares if the glass is on the third or the second row, and the other person might have calculated where the glass is supposed to go.
Right. And how many glasses could fit in there and how many could be shoved in and possibly chip said glasses or plates. But we're not talking about that.
Sounds like you're going back into conflict and raising some passive aggressive kinds of things.
No, we don't have conflict because you banned me from loading the dishwasher. So it's really not a thing.
There's still some things going on.
No, nothing's going on. You're in charge of dishwashing, baby. That's how we solve that conflict. All right, 4, condemnation. And this can be rejection by significant others, lack of support from coworkers, betrayal by a friend, It could also be betrayal from trauma within the marriage, and if people are making false accusations against you. And then sometimes, again, why we love thanks for the feedback, just if you interpret somebody's coaching or feedback to you as condemnation, when it might not actually be condemnation and criticism, your interpretation or perception of it can be the problem.
So that's a form of self-condemnation. So there's two. One that's real, based on actually, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I kicked the dog or something. And then I don't let it go. I all week long, I hate myself for kicking the dog.
So it's like toxic shame within yourself.
Right. And then there's this other one that you just mentioned, which is condemnation based on perception of what I think somebody else is thinking.
Right.
Which is also covered in EHR.
EHR, right? I'm thinking that you're thinking, I'm thinking that you're feeling. Ask clarifying questions. We know that neurodivergent and neurotypical people use language differently. We know we perceive things differently, and we know because of double empathy, we don't always read each other's cues accurately. So
you said double empathy, but didn't explain it.
Oh, so double empathy. Sorry. I've done a YouTube on that. We did another podcast on that. But double empathy refers to, I think it was Dr. Gill we talked about it with. Double empathy is that there's an empathy problem from the neurodivergent person to the neurotypical, and the neurotypical to the neurodivergent, on not understanding really what it's like to be in that person's shoes. Maybe sometimes the neurotypical person may not have compassion for some of the challenges of the neurodivergent person. The neurodivergent person, if you feel and think things differently, like Dan would say, well, that doesn't bother me, it shouldn't bother you. That can create that double empathy. Then if she's looking for emotional support, but he doesn't think there's anything and needs emotional support, we've come into a double empathy bind. And so, again, EHR is another class, emotionally healthy relationships. Sorry, you might not know what EHR is. That is, we'll talk about that, clarifying expectations and asking those questions.
Yes.
Okay. Next.
Concerns. This is I like the first example that it gives. Just things aren't weighty that you're not so uncertain that you think that a war is going to break out, but they've got an uncertainty to them, and you have a preference for them. And the first example given is unsaved or rebellious loved ones, the prodigal child.
Especially if it's your child or your grandchild, right. That's very weighty.
And depending on how rebellious or prodigal they are, there's a difference between just not interested, but your way, or I'm going to go actually be the prodigal son.
Heretical or doing some very dangerous things. Right. You mentioned this, you kind of put it up in change, but they put it in concerns, an unpredictable or uncertain future. So again, that's where a lot of couples come to us, and sometimes one spouse, okay, it's usually the guy that says this, if I put all this effort into it and it's not real and it might not change, do I really want to put all this effort into it if I can't predict that she will do ABC or that our marriage is restored? So, right, it's unpredictable. All you can do is do your best, make the changes that are necessary. And the wife feels the same way as well. Like, can we fix this? Is it sometimes too much water under the bridge if there's abuse or trauma, PTSD? Some have. We don't know. That's uncertain. So that can cause stress.
We're towards the end of the year in the corporate world, so now's the time when people start doing reviews.
Right.
And sometimes even if you can say, I did X, Y, Z, you don't necessarily know what's going to come out of that until you actually read the review. So there's uncertainty created by that, even if you have reasonable amount of confidence that you performed well.
Mm-hmm. Fourth quarter, not knowing if you're going to get a bonus or not, or you're counting on that for something financial. Recent, frequent, or fear of failure. That's a huge issue that a lot of our couples are coming to us with. There's a huge fear that this is going to fail. Now, again, let's kind of review all of that. Coming into counseling or coaching, we've got unresolved conflict, crisis moments, change going on, either feeling condemned or criticized, and then all this unpredictable, uncertain stuff. So there's a lot of stress, perfectionism, and if you're tying your identity to that perfectionism or to not making mistakes.
And that one's got an interesting. So if you ever played ball of any kind, some kind of competitive sport, and you had some kind of, maybe you're on a losing streak or you're just not playing well, you're in a slump. That could be compounding. You're thinking about it so much that the amount of time you're thinking about it is actually impairing your ability. Right? You're just right. You see what I'm trying to get
Yeah,
there?
it's like the analysis paralysis, overthinking instead of the
Just
doing. I'm so afraid I'm going to strike out. I strike out.
Yeah.
Or I strike out on purpose, as we say to some of our listeners.
You shouldn't.
You should not strike out on purpose, but many of our clients strike out on purpose.
Just in case you're wondering, there is no good in baseball to strike out on purpose.
Okay.
Yes. You don't advance the runner.
No.
Right. You don't get anything out of that.
Next is competition.
So this one's kind of like performance. I'm only good because as good as I did. Comparisons between family and friends. That one's envy and jealousy for who's good at whatever. It's like going to Jerry just landed the biggest shark ever and we're going to get the Guinness Book of World Records, right? So it's that comparison between who's got the coolest car in the driveway and stuff like that.
Or it could also be a lot of our couples are like, if only I was married to a neurotypical person, or this neurotypical couple, they're doing better than us. And it's all because they're neurotypical and their marriage and everything looks better than our marriage. I mean, I've even had some ladies in my groups confess that when they hear some of the other ladies are doing better or that their marriages are starting to excel, one lady said, I can't be happy for her because my marriage, I'm in so much pain for my marriage. I'm actually jealous that your marriage is doing better than mine. And you're married to someone special. I'm married to someone special. It's not fair that yours is going better than mine. So comparison, which we know comparison is a thief of joy.
And we mentioned a little bit on the last one too, but also here in competition, the amount of your identity is inside of your capacity, your performance.
Yeah, of winning, being the best, right. Your image protection.
Because now you're tying to how you feel about yourself to the last time you did whatever that thing was, right? So I view me based on my capability and my output. And so if I'm in a down week, then, who knows what I feel like about myself, what that expresses as stresses out. Because I think we're not just talking about the stress you might feel in you, but the stress that who you feel about you, how that ripples into others around you.
Right.
So when I am down on me because I didn't hit a grand slam every day, then that likely shows up in some form, from a depression to an anger to something.
Depression, anxiety. Stress can lead to mental health struggles, especially the ongoing stress. If you've heard any of our other podcasts on Cassandra phenomenon or ongoing traumatic relational stress, that's something that's usually expressed by one or both members in the relationship, which is very similar to post-traumatic stress, except for it's not a one event. It's ongoing trauma and stress from the relationship. The last one, conscious.
Reasons you can challenge conscious. Well, I like the last one the best. It kind of sums it up, I think. Acknowledgement of sin is considered an admission of weakness. So I kicked the dog or whatever it was I did, and actually saying it out loud or even admitting it to yourself is a admission that you're not as good as you thought you were. Or everybody else knows that you're not as good as they once thought you were.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that she says is if you're putting yourself, others, she says things, I'm going to put the word marriage in there. Self, others, things, or marriage become more important than God, your own relationship with God. So if you've shifted and put yourself or something else in the driver's seat, we use the term white knuckling enough. If you're constantly just white knuckling, trying to just try harder. And that self-effort, she says it is stressful because if you're putting all of your lives on yourself without the Holy Spirit in your relationship with Jesus, self-effort perceived as the best way of meeting your own needs, that's not going to lead to everlasting change, and it's not going to get rid of stress.
Right. Right, because that's kind of like watching the squirrel outside. Right? The squirrel always thinks there's not enough acorns in wherever they keep them.
They have a scarcity mindset.
Right. And they never recognized that the sun came up. Just like looked at it and said, wow, that's pretty. Why? Because they were just constantly looking for that next day. And sometimes we get into that, this thing and this thing and this thing are the things I need the most of. And we forget what's around us, and that constant clamoring for next creates a ripple around us that it's repelling.
And that kind of ties into the next thing, that if your own personal needs, wants, desires eclipse the needs of others, your marriage, your system, if the universe is resolving around one person when a family is a system, you and I, our marriage, we're a system within the system because we have children, and there's relationships with each child that causes a system. And if you are thinking of only yourself, either by self-referencing or selfishness, that's a matter of conscience that needs to change because it's causing stress in the system. And then there's just good old sin.
Yes.
Right? Just good old sin that someone is involved in a sinful behavior. Maybe it is a character issue. And we're always careful to say that being neurodivergent is different. Being neurodivergent is neurology, and that's different than character and willingness and motivation. So we separate those things out. Either party, neurotypical or neurodiverse, can have a sin or a character issue that is leading up to. So you just kind of think about all the different things that we talked about: conflict, crisis, change, condemnation, concerns, competition, conscience.
They all start with C.
They all start with C. But all of those things are usually what is coming to us with one of our neurodiverse couples. So you asked about what kind of stress is good stress. Well, the only thing she talked about in the book is that stress was meant to be a little bit of a motivator. I want to make a good grade on that test, so maybe I should study. I want to run a marathon, so maybe I should practice and work out and work it. So like a little bit of stress can be a motivator to get the next thing done. But when things are not resolving, when it's affecting relationships, when it's affecting your health, when it's bringing tension into the system, that is unhealthy stress. So we want to talk then about some of the groups that we have happening in our next semester. We've already mentioned two, the Thanks for the Feedback, which is, again, for conflict resolution and learning how to give and receive feedback. Actually, the basic skill at communication and conflict resolution is, can you give and receive feedback? If you can't give and receive feedback, you're going to have a problem at work, in your marriage, counseling and coaching, because you can't take feedback. The Emotionally Healthy Relationships teaches 6 communication skills, and one of them is a conflict resolution skill. And then you've got one that is just for men. Why don't you talk about that one?
So these two, The Other Half of Church and Rare Leadership, were both also Dr. Wilder books, but they, in combination, the Other Half of Church talks about a foundation, talks about creating an environment that a healthy ecosystem thrives in. And in this case, we're talking about the family unit,
Right.
Either
which we know them by now,
spouse alone, or with immediate family or extended family. And it talks about the way that when those 4 items are present, it facilitates, it creates. It's just like trying to grow a plant in a rock garden. It doesn't work. You do on purpose a good soil.
Right. So the 4 elements, if you're new to the podcast, we've talked about Dr. Wilder a lot. But the 4 elements are joy,
I said,
group identity, and
healthy correction.
So in a low joy, low hesed, low group identity home, that is a stressful environment. So if you want to de-stress and change the tension level in your house, we need to have high joy, high hesed, group and marriage identity, team identity. And so these books are not marriage books. We're taking them and using them in a capacity. That brings me to another Wilder group that I am doing based on Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, combined with Joyful Journey. So Dan's group, The Other Half of Church, Rare Leadership, which I think you called that group Iron Sharpening Iron, right? Yes. So this is a men's group, Bible study, plus
we'll also do one of the EHR devotionals.
Oh, and the day by day. All right. So for ladies, if you have heard our Dr. Wilder, who we had him back in November, and we had a Q&A with him from those who had been in our enemy mode class. And then I asked him a question about fear bonds versus love bonds. And that comes from this book, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You. So if you are a wife in a neurodiverse relationship, and you're kind of in a place of wanting to do some kind of self-work on inner healing and kind of reclaiming your identity in Christ and kind of who you are outside of your marriage. And specifically, I guess I'll read through some of the things in here if I can find the table of contents real quick. Working on wholeness, maturity, recovery, belonging, kind of finding your heart again, what's your calling, what kind of your purpose, and then coming, if you're in a fear bond, how to move from a fear bond to a love bond. Now that's going to take a relational thing. Another group for women that I am doing, this is kind of based on different thoughts and habits that maybe you're changed. Maybe you're kind of newly in the diagnosed situation or newly into your marriage work. And we're going to do Emotionally Healthy Women by Jerry Scazzaro. The 8 things you need to quit. Quit being afraid of what others think. Quit lying. Quit dying to the wrong things. Quit denying your anger, sadness, and fear. Quit blaming. Here's the big one. Quit overfunctioning. Quit faulty thinking, and quit living someone else's life. And we'll combine that with this book, I Hurt, which comes with an assessment that you'll do, which will help you see what are some of the unhealthy thoughts that you need to work on inside of yourself to be okay. It's based on cognitive behavioral work to change our beliefs, to change some of our behaviors. This group is actually almost full. And so this one probably only has 2 or 3 slots left in it. Once the newsletter came out, that was the one. I've been doing this group for a while now. And then I have a group, it'll be a mini session for neurotypical wives. If your spouse has been diagnosed or you have come to believe or suspected that your spouse is on the spectrum, it's a kind of what can we expect to change, redefining us as a neurodiverse couple. And then some of our coaches have a lot of great things too. Team Rochford is going to be actually doing a parenting group based on the book that Dan and I have just written on embracing the autism spectrum, finding hope and joy, navigating your neurodiverse family journey. So that one's geared towards neurodiverse couples in a neurodiverse family, or maybe you're neurotypical and you have neurodiverse children. So ADHD, autism, you still have kids under the age of 18. It's a kind of a parenting and neurodiversity kind of autism, faith, marriage, family group. What else?
I don't know. I only do them 2.
You've got 2, I've got 4. Charity and Jeremy have some groups. Iris, coaching with Iris, she has groups. Barbara Grant, by the time this is being recorded, we don't know hers, but she usually has groups for women. And Dr. Mary Jones also has group for women. So I think that's pretty much all of our coaches that are on our referral sheet that have something. So if you're looking for group support, you're looking maybe just to meet another wife or a husband that thinks like you, that's based on biblically sound teaching that also talks about neurodiversity and working on your neurodiverse relationship. We welcome you to join one of our groups.
If you don't think a group is useful, go listen to the Just the Guys group on groups.
Right. So I actually get a lot of positive feedback about that. One of my clients just the other day was saying one of the things that he really liked about the Just the Guys version was like, there's other people that think like me. And they'll say, he said to me, it's like they're inside of my head. So those usually drop mid-month on a Wednesday. And it's a different combination of you, Perry, Mark, Greg, Clay, Jeremy. So different combinations of the guys who get together who are talking about
but we did one specifically on groups.
Yes, back in October. Did one on the importance of groups.
Is group. So if you don't think a group is valuable, maybe go listen to that one and then see if you still think that.
Or we can go all the way back to the very first one that we did of this year, 2023. We were talking about the other half of church, because part of the concept of transformation isn't just joy and
Just it.
It is group identity. And so being in a group that's going to remind you of who you are in Christ and what you're supposed to be doing based on biblical principles. That group identity is really important to move from just, oh, I read this really good book and it's got some good ideas in it, to practical transformation. And you only get what you put into a group.
Right.
If you're there under duress or to get brownie points with
Or
your
if you don't
spouse.
talk or engage.
Yeah, if you don't talk, engage, and keep your camera off, then you might not be getting out of it what you could. So
But it could be true that that's all you're ready for in the next group. You get
maybe
you get more visibly engaged.
Yeah. So if you're interested in group coaching, a lot of the reasons we do this is based on, again, group identity, but also it's financially practical. If you can't really afford one-on-one right now, or can't get into group marriage counseling, maybe because one of the coaches we have, most of us have wait lists right now. A group is a way to get in and get started, start learning, start growing, start meeting other people. It's kind of the next small thing you can do. And then sometimes some couples are in such distress and things are not going well and they're not living in the same home. So sometimes having separate groups where you're working on individual things can be helpful. So as we're going into here early the month of December, this might be a high stress month for you. And so the importance of kind of talking about stress wasn't just to talk about the groups and all that stuff that was coming out, but just to really sit back and think of all the things we talked about. If you even had just one of those 7 C's, you're in a pretty stressful situation. Many of you have 5, 6, and 7 of those C's. And so just thinking that if we keep doing the same thing over and over and you're going to get different results is called, come on, you know the adage, do the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. That's the definition of insanity.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me again. I was going to see if you're going to go insane.
Oh. I guess you're going to know he knows this. Come on, man. Really? He's just looking at me with this blank stare. I was like, he had me like, oh, come on. You don't know that?
I wonder if she'll ask me again.
It is insanity over here. All right. So
that's a good one.
Insanity. I know.
I haven't been called that before.
I know. All right. So as we are.
It's like another checkbox on my.
Of making people crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, good. You can put it on your resume. And working with me will cause insanity. Yeah. So as we are coming to a close, if you're in stress, and this is a stressful holiday season, we want you to think about self-care and your purpose and de-stressing. Your marriage is important, but you as an individual is important too. So how do we end the show, Dan? You're not helping me
God
today.
loves you very much.
No, that's Veggie Tales. So we want you to know that there is hope for your future.
And I'm not alone on your journey.
And you're not alone on your journey.
And you're not alone on your journey. Oh, and if you need something Christmas because you need, just remember to joy. You can self-joy. You can go outside.
Actually, no, Dr. Wilder said there was no self-joy.
No, but you can go appreciate the wonder.
Right, if you're connecting joy with God. Remember, that was very important on Dr. Wilder's thing. You cannot self-joy. Right. You must do that in relationship with others. Oh, and if it is early in December and you'll want to get our book, it should be out by now. And you can find that at ChristianNeuroDiverseFamilies.com. The audiobook is certainly available. And then the print book and the workbook should be coming out soon. So we'll catch you again next podcast.
All right.